There was something about those hands that told a story long before Amelia ever opened her mouth. They weren't just working hands. They were broken hands. Hands that bled every single day. Amelia was 56 years old, and for nearly 4 decades her life had followed the same cruel routine. Before sunrise, she walked to the river with a wicker basket on her back. By the time most of the city was waking up, her hands were already submerged in freezing water, scrubbing other people's clothes against stone. Imagine plunging your hands into ice-cold water, knowing it will reopen wounds that never fully heal. Imagine knowing that your survival depends on hurting yourself again and again. That was Amelia's reality. She lived with advanced lupus, an autoimmune disease that attacked her joints, her skin, and her kidneys. Her hands were covered in open sores. Purple cracks split her skin like dry earth in a drought. Every touch burned, every movement hurt. And yet, she showed up every morning. Not because she was strong, but because she had no choice. Each day of washing earned her the equivalent of a few dollars, not even enough for food some days, certainly not enough for the dialysis she desperately needed to stay alive. The math was brutal. 3 treatments a week, hundreds she didn't have. So Amelia skipped sessions, borrowed money, sold what little she owned. She was playing roulette with her own life. But physical pain was not the worst thing she carried. The deepest wound lived in her chest. 5 years earlier, her only son had turned his back on her, ashamed of her poverty, ashamed of her mother who didn't fit the life he had built. He took her grandchildren away. No visits, no calls, no explanations, just silence. That rejection hurt more than lupus ever could. On the morning everything changed, Amelia arrived at the river burning with fever. Her body shook, her vision blurred. Any reasonable person would have gone to a hospital, but hunger doesn't wait, and neither does desperation. As she knelt by her stone and lowered her hands into the water, she whispered the same prayer she had prayed for years. God, just let me survive one more day. She had no idea heaven was already walking toward her.
The river was unusually quiet that morning. Not peaceful, uneasy. Amelia had been washing for nearly 3 hours when she noticed the whispers. Low at first, then urgent, then sharp with fear. Don't let him come closer. Oh God, what is that? Someone tell him to leave. Amelia looked up. Coming down the dirt path toward the river was a man bent under the weight of a filthy sack. His clothes were little more than rags. His body moved stiffly, unnaturally, as if every step caused pain. As he drew closer, the reason for the fear became clear. His skin was covered in open sores. His face was partially collapsed, scarred beyond recognition. His hands, what remained of them, were wrapped in dirty cloth, dark with blood and pus. Leprosy. The women recoiled instantly. Some grabbed their baskets and fled. Others shouted insults born from terror. "Stay away! You'll infect us! Get out of here!" The man stopped, not because he was angry, because he was used to it. His shoulders sank as if the weight of rejection was heavier than the sack he carried. His head lowered, like someone trying to disappear. And then he looked at Amelia. She didn't know how to explain it later, but there was something in his eyes she recognized immediately. Not disease, not madness, but a pain so old, so deep,
It felt familiar. The man took a few hesitant steps toward her, ignoring the screams behind him. He stopped several feet away and spoke in a broken, trembling voice. "Ma'am, please, could you wash these?" He gestured to the sack. "I'll pay you, whatever you ask. I just need clean clothes." Amelia stood slowly, her knees shaking from fever and exhaustion. She opened the sack. The smell hit her first. Blood, infection, rot. The clothes inside were soaked with suffering. Touching them with her open wounds would be agony. Worse, it could kill her. The risk was real. "Please," the man whispered, tears filling his eyes. "I went to everyone. No one will touch my things. I understand. I know I'm disgusting. If you can't, I don't blame you." Amelia closed her eyes, and suddenly she wasn't at the river anymore. She was standing in her son's doorway, hearing him say she didn't belong in his life. The same look of shame, the same rejection. She took a breath. Then she said the words that would change everything. "Leave the clothes here, brother. I'll wash them." The river fell silent.
The reaction was immediate. "Amelia, are you out of your mind?" someone shouted. "You'll die. That man is diseased." Even Marta, the woman who had washed beside her for years, ran closer, stopping several feet away. "Amelia, please," she begged. "Look at your hands. Look at your face. You have a fever. That clothing is full of infection. You're killing yourself." Amelia didn't answer. She dragged the sack to her stone and began pulling out the clothes, one by one. The man stammered nervously. I don't have much money, only a few bills. I know it's not enough for this kind of work." She didn't look up. "We'll talk about payment later," she said quietly. "Come back in 3 hours." The man nodded, stunned. Tears streamed down his ruined face as he walked away, glancing back as if afraid she might change her mind. Amelia took the first shirt, once white, now stained brown and yellow with dried blood and disease. She lowered it into the river. The pain was immediate and indescribable. Her open wounds collided with freezing water and contaminated fabric. It felt like acid burning into raw flesh. Her body convulsed. She bit her lip until she tasted blood to keep from screaming. The river slowly turned pink. Her blood mixed with his. She scrubbed. Each movement was torture, each breath an act of defiance. Her fever climbed higher. Her hands swelled. Fresh blood ran freely down her wrists. The lupus that had already ravaged her body now raged uncontrollably. Women whispered from a distance, "She's insane. This is why her son abandoned her. She's always been too good for her own good." Amelia heard none of it. She scrubbed shirt after shirt, pants, bandages, rags that barely deserved the name clothing. 2 hours passed. She trembled violently now, burning from fever, freezing from the water. Her vision darkened at the edges. Several times she nearly collapsed. Marta approached again, crying openly. "Please stop. He's not worth your life." Amelia looked up, her eyes glassy but steady. "When my son told me I wasn't worthy to know my grandchildren, I decided something." Her voice broke, but she continued. "If I'm invisible to my own blood, then I will live for those the world refuses to see." She returned to scrubbing. At the end of the 3rd hour,
The last garment lay clean on the stones, white, restored, transformed. Amelia collapsed beside the river. And then she heard footsteps.
The man had returned. He stopped short when he saw his clothes spread across the stones, clean, bright, transformed beyond recognition. For a moment he couldn't speak. Then his knees buckled and he dropped the sack from his shoulders. "No one," he whispered, "no one has done something like this for me in years." Amelia tried to stand, but her body failed her. Her hands hung uselessly at her sides, swollen and bleeding. Dark spots danced in her vision. "How much do I owe you?" the man asked, pulling out a handful of crumpled bills and coins. "It's not much, but it's everything I have." Amelia shook her head weakly. "You don't have to pay. Take your clothes. May God bless you." The air changed. The man froze, staring at her as if he hadn't heard correctly. "What did you say?" "You don't have to pay." He stepped closer. Amelia should have felt fear. She didn't. He reached out and gently placed his wrapped hands over hers. The moment he touched her, warmth flooded her body, not the burning heat of fever, but a deep, living warmth, like sunlight breaking through frozen ground. Amelia gasped, trying to pull away, but his grip was firm and steady. She looked into his eyes. They were no longer the eyes of a broken man. They shone. Golden. Endless. Ancient. The sores on her hands began to close. Not slowly. Instantly. Open wounds sealed. Cracked skin smoothed. Blood vanished. Swelling disappeared, as if time itself were reversing. Amelia cried out, falling to her knees. "Look!" Marta screamed. "Her hands!" The women rushed forward, forgetting their fear. The warmth spread. Up her arms. Into her chest. Down her spine. Stopping at her lower back. Her kidneys. The heat intensified until she screamed. Not in pain, but in shock. Then suddenly, relief. The crushing ache in her joints vanished. Her breath came easy for the first time in decades. She felt alive, whole. She looked up at the man, trembling. "Who are you?" she whispered. He smiled, not with pity, but with love that felt unbearable in its depth. "Whoever washes the suffering of others with wounded hands will never be left without healing." Her heart pounded. Then his voice softened. "Your granddaughter is in the children's hospital, room 302. Amelia's breath caught. "She is dying, but she will live." Tears streamed down her face. The man began to walk toward the river, light gathering around him like mist at dawn. "Go. At 4 o'clock. Reconciliation awaits you." And then he was gone. At exactly 4 o'clock that afternoon, Amelia stood at the entrance of the children's hospital. For the first time in 20 years, her body didn't ache. Her hands, once cracked, bleeding, and swollen, were smooth and steady. She opened and closed her fingers in disbelief as she walked. She didn't stop at reception. She went straight to the 3rd floor, room 302. The door was half open. Inside, a man sat hunched beside a small hospital bed. His shoulders shook as he cried silently into his hands. It was her son. Marcelo looked older, smaller. The confidence that once armored him was gone, stripped away by fear. On the bed
lay a little girl with pale skin and tubes running into her tiny arms. Emma. Amelia's knees nearly gave out. She stepped inside. Marcelo looked up. For a moment he didn't recognize her. Then his eyes widened. Mama. The word broke him. He stood, crossed the room in 2 steps, and collapsed into her arms like a child. He sobbed openly, gripping her as if she might disappear. I was wrong. I was so wrong. I've begged God for a miracle. I didn't deserve one. Amelia held her son. No anger, no accusation, only love. Later that night, the doctors entered the room in confusion. Emma's test results had changed. The cancer markers were dropping rapidly, unexplainably. Within weeks, they would call it a medical anomaly. Within months, remission. Within years, a story told and retold in disbelief. As for Amelia, her tests stunned every specialist who examined her. Healthy kidneys, no lupus activity, no explanation. But she knew. She had washed the suffering of someone the world had rejected, and heaven had noticed. Years later, near the same river, a small community laundry would open. Clean water, gloves, dignity, and work for women whose hands had known pain. On its wall, a simple sign read, "No one is invisible here." And sometimes, when Amelia watched her grandchildren play, she would look at her hands and smile, remembering the day she told a stranger, "You don't have to pay," because love already had.